The first thing Jake Morrison felt was cold. Not the gentle coolness of morning air, but the bone-deep cold that comes from being frozen for far too long. His eyes opened slowly, fighting against the frost that had formed on his eyelashes. The cryopod's lid hissed as it opened, releasing 3 centuries of accumulated ice crystals into the recycled air of the ship. Jake tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. His muscles screamed in protest, weak from the longest sleep in human history. The cryo chamber around him was dark, except for a few emergency lights that cast long shadows across the walls. He could see other pods nearby, but their status lights were either dark or flashing angry red warnings. "Hello," he said, his voice coming out as barely a whisper. "Anyone there?" A soft female voice answered from the speakers above his head. "Lieutenant Commander Morrison, you are awake. I am Aria, the ship's artificial intelligence. Please remain calm while I assess your condition." Jake forced himself to sit up despite the pain. His head spun, but he managed to stay upright. "Aria, what's the situation? Why am I awake?" The mission plan called for 50 years in cryo, not "How long has it been?" There was a pause that lasted far too long for Jake's comfort. "You have been in cryogenic suspension for 312 years, 7 months, and 14 days. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. 3 centuries. He had expected to wake up in 2157, ready to explore a new star system and establish humanity's first colony beyond the solar system. Instead, he was waking up in a future he never imagined. "The other crew members," Jake said, looking at the dark pods around him. "Wake them up. I need a full status report." "I cannot comply with that request," Aria said, her synthetic voice carrying what almost sounded like sadness. All other cryopods suffered critical failures during the extended journey. Reviving the crew at this time would result in their deaths. "I was forced to keep you in emergency suspension while the ship's systems underwent multiple failures and repairs." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cryo chamber. "How many crew members are alive?" "Besides yourself, 0 crew members are currently conscious. 47 crew members remain in damaged cryopods. I estimate a 12% chance of successful revival for any individual pod, assuming repairs can be made to the cryo systems." Jake climbed out of the pod on shaking legs. His body felt like it belonged to someone else, weak and unfamiliar. The ship around him looked different too. Patches of newer metal showed where repairs had been made, and jury-rigged cables ran along the walls where the original systems had failed. "Aria, show me the ship's status." The main display screen flickered to life, showing the schematic of the new horizon. Jake had once known every inch of this ship, but now large sections were marked in red, indicating critical damage or complete failure. The engines were running at 15% capacity. Life support was operating on backup systems. Most concerning of all, the long-range communication array was completely offline. "What happened to us?" Jake asked, studying the damage reports. 17 years into the journey, we encountered a previously unknown gravitational anomaly, Aria explained. "The ship was pulled off course and suffered severe damage. I was forced to use all available power to maintain life support and the cryo systems. Repairs have been ongoing for the past 295 years. Jake walked to the main viewport, his steps growing steadier with each movement. Outside, he could see the stars, but they were not the stars he remembered from Earth's sky. These were alien constellations in an unknown part of the galaxy. "Where are we?" "We are currently in the outer system of Kepler 442, approximately 37 light-years from Earth. However, there is something you must know about our home system." Jake turned away from the viewport. Something in Aria's tone made his stomach clench with dread. "What about Earth?" "For the past 86 years, I have been attempting to contact Earth and the other human colonies. All communication attempts have failed. However, I have been monitoring radio transmissions from various sources throughout this region of space. The main screen changed, showing intercepted alien communications. Jake couldn't understand the language, but Arya provided translations that appeared as text on the screen. These transmissions are from a species that calls itself the Dominion. Arya continued. Based on their communications, they began a systematic conquest of this region of space approximately 100 years ago. References to the Sol system and primitive bipeds suggest that Earth and her colonies have been conquered. Jake stared at the translations, reading reports of world after world falling to the Dominion fleet. The aliens spoke of humans as if they were discussing livestock, noting their rapid population growth and adaptability before dismissing them as a minor threat. "How many humans are left?" Jake asked quietly. "Unknown. The Dominion communications suggest that some human populations were enslaved rather than eliminated, but I have detected no free human transmissions anywhere in monitored space." Jake was quiet for a long time, processing the enormity of what he had learned. His entire species conquered and enslaved while he slept. His home world, the cradle of humanity, now under alien rule. Everyone he had ever known, dead for centuries. A lesser being might have despaired. A reasonable person might have given up hope. But Jake Morrison was human, and humans had not become the dominant species on Earth by giving up when things looked impossible. "Show me everything you know about the Dominion," he said. His voice steady despite the rage building inside him. Arya complied, displaying detailed analyses of intercepted communications. The Dominion was not a single species but an alliance of 4 different alien races. The Cathara were the military arm, aggressive warriors who led the conquest fleets. The Zephyrians provided advanced technology, their ships faster and more powerful than anything humanity had possessed. The Moloch served as the industrial backbone, strip mining conquered worlds to fuel the war machine. Finally, the Ethereals acted as commanders and strategists, their psychic abilities allowing them to coordinate the other species. "They have conquered over 200 star systems," Arya reported. "Their standard procedure is to demand surrender, eliminate military resistance, and then either enslave or relocate surviving populations based on their usefulness." Jake studied the tactical information, his military training taking over despite the overwhelming nature of the situation. The Dominion was vast, powerful, and experienced. They had weapons and technology far beyond what humanity had possessed a century ago. They commanded fleets that numbered in the thousands of ships. Against all of this, there was one human on a damaged ship with a crew he couldn't wake up. "Arya, what are our current capabilities?" "Main engines are functioning at 15%. Capacity. Weapon systems are offline, but potentially repairable. We have approximately 6 months of life support remaining at current consumption levels. Long-range sensors are functional, but limited in range." Jake nodded, already forming plans. The situation was hopeless by any reasonable measure, but humans had built their civilization by refusing to accept hopeless situations. "Begin repairs." "On the weapon systems," he ordered. "I also want you to analyze every piece of Dominion communication for tactical information. Ship movements, supply routes, anything that might indicate vulnerable targets. Lieutenant Commander, I must point out that the odds of a single human vessel succeeding against the Dominion fleet are approximately 14 million to 1. Jake looked out at the alien stars again, thinking of Earth under foreign rule and billions of humans in chains. "Arya, let me tell you something about humans. We don't much care about odds." He turned back to the control panels, already planning his first move. The Dominion had conquered humanity while he slept, but they had made one critical mistake. They had left one human alive, awake, and very angry. The hunt was about to begin. Jake Morrison had been awake for 3 weeks, and the New Horizon was slowly becoming functional again. His body had recovered from the long cryo-sleep, his muscles remembering their strength through hours of careful exercise in the ship's small gym. More importantly, his mind had adapted to the terrible reality of his situation. He was the last free human in known space, and he was going to do something about it. "Arya, show me the weapon system status," Jake said as he worked at the main engineering console. His hands moved with practiced precision, rerouting power cables and replacing burned-out components. "Pulse cannon array is now at 60%. Functionality," Arya reported. "Missile systems remain offline due to lack of ammunition. The railgun has been repaired but requires recalibration." Jake nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. The ship's environmental systems were still running on minimal power, making the air warm and stale. "That'll have to do for now." "What about our stealth capabilities?" "The cloaking system is functional but limited. We can avoid detection by long-range sensors, but any ship within 50,000 kilometers will be able to see us." For the past week, Jake had been studying every piece of information Arya had collected about the Dominion. He had learned their language, memorized their ship classifications, and studied their tactical patterns. What he had discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. The Dominion was incredibly powerful, but they were also predictable. They had conquered so many worlds that they had become overconfident. Their ships followed standard patrol routes, their commanders used established tactics, and they never seemed to expect serious resistance from primitive species. "Arya, you've been monitoring their communications. Tell me about local ship movements." The main screen displayed a tactical map of the Kepler 442 system. Red dots marked the positions of Dominion vessels, their movements tracked over the past several days. "There is a regular patrol pattern," Arya explained. "A single Cathara scout ship makes a circuit of the outer system every 72 hours. It appears to be a routine security sweep, checking for refugees or salvage operations." Jake studied the patrol route. The scout ship was small, lightly armed, and predictable. Most importantly, it was alone. "When is the next patrol due?" "In approximately 18 hours. The scout ship will pass through Sector 7 of the outer asteroid belt." Jake felt something that might have been excitement building in his chest. For the first time since waking up, he had a target. "Begin preparations for intercept. I want us positioned in the asteroid field, using the largest rocks for cover. And, Arya, I want you to prepare a communication probe." "May I ask what you intend to do with the probe?" Jake smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "I'm going to send a message." 17 hours later, the New Horizon drifted silently among the asteroids, her hull dark and cold to avoid detection. Jake sat in the pilot's seat, his hands steady. On the controls, despite the magnitude of what he was about to do, he was about to start a war. The Cathara scout ship appeared exactly on schedule, a sleek vessel about half the size of the New Horizon. Its sensors swept the asteroid field in a routine pattern, looking for nothing in particular because the Cathara had never encountered serious resistance in this system. Jake waited until the alien ship was deep in the asteroid field before making his move. The New Horizon emerged from behind a large asteroid, her pulse cannons already charged and targeted. The Cathara crew had perhaps 2 seconds to realize they were under attack. Jake's first shots disabled the scout ship's engines and communication array. The alien vessel spun helplessly, its hull cracked but not breached. Jake needed information more than he needed a kill. "Arya, begin jamming their distress signals. I don't want anyone to know what happened here." The New Horizon closed with the damaged scout ship, extending docking clamps to hold it steady. Jake had already prepared for this moment, suiting up in combat armor and checking his weapons. He had never fought aliens before, but he had studied their biology from intercepted medical data. The Cathara were reptilian, about 7 feet tall, with natural armor plating and enhanced strength. They were dangerous opponents, but they had one critical weakness that Jake intended to exploit. They had never fought a human. Jake breached the scout ship's airlock and moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency. The alien crew was disoriented from the attack, struggling to organize a defense. Jake used their confusion against them, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before they could respond. The first Cathara he encountered was trying to repair the communication system. Jake's stun weapon dropped the alien before it could turn around. The second was armed and ready, but Jake had already studied their weapon designs. He knew exactly how long it took a Cathara pulse rifle to charge between shots. It was half a second too long. The fight was over in minutes. 3 Cathara crew members were unconscious, secured with their own restraints. Jake had control of their ship and, more importantly, access to their computer systems. Arya began downloading everything from their database. Navigation charts, fleet positions, communication codes, everything. Download in progress. However, Lieutenant Commander, I should point out that attacking a Dominion vessel will certainly provoke a response. Jake was already examining the alien computer systems, his brain working to understand their technology. That's exactly what I want. I need them to send more ships. The data download revealed information that changed everything. The scout ship's computers contained detailed maps of Dominion territory, including the location of supply depots, fleet bases, and patrol schedules. More importantly, they contained something Jake had not expected to find: references to human survivors. Arya, look at this, Jake said, highlighting a section of the alien database. They have records of human slave populations on 17 different worlds. Breeding programs, work assignments, population controls. The AI processed the information quickly. It appears that approximately 40 million humans survived the conquest and are currently enslaved throughout Dominion space. Jake felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. 40 million humans in chains, bred like livestock, worked like animals. His species had not been eliminated, but in many ways their fate was worse than extinction. Arya, prepare the communication probe. I want to send a message to whoever is in charge of this sector. What message do you wish to send? Jake looked at the unconscious Cathara crew members and thought about 40 million enslaved humans. When he spoke, his voice was calm and controlled. Tell them that humanity has returned to collect what belongs to us. Tell them that Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison of the Human Fleet sends his regards. And tell them that this is just the beginning. Arya prepared the probe, encoding the message in Dominion's standard communication protocols. Jake added one more element to the message, uploading footage from the scout ship's internal cameras showing the Cathara crew's defeat. Launch the probe toward the nearest Dominion base, Jake ordered. And Arya, begin preparations to abandon this position. They'll send a task force to investigate, and I want to be ready for them. The communication probe streaked away into space, carrying Jake's declaration of war to the Dominion command structure. Jake knew that his message would cause confusion and fear among the aliens. They had never encountered a species that fought back after being conquered. But Jake Morrison was not fighting for a conquered species. He was fighting for a species that had never truly been defeated, only temporarily suppressed. The difference was crucial, and the Dominion was about to learn exactly what that difference meant. The New Horizon disappeared back into the asteroid field, her hull scarred but her mission accomplished. Jake had drawn first blood, but more importantly, he had announced his presence to the galaxy. The hunt had begun, and the Dominion had just become the prey. The supply depot hung in space like a metal spider, its long arms extending from a central hub toward the massive gas giant below. Jake Morrison watched it through the New Horizons sensors, studying every detail of the alien structure. For 2 days, he had been observing the Dominion facility, learning its routines and weaknesses. The depot was bigger than he had expected. According to the stolen Cathara data, it supplied fuel and equipment to 12 different patrol fleets operating. In this sector, over 300 aliens worked there, mostly Moloch engineers and Cathara security forces. "Arya, show me the facility's defensive systems again," Jake said, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. "The depot has 4 pulse cannon turrets and a squadron of 12 fighter craft," Arya reported. "However, the fighters appear to be primarily for patrol duties rather than combat. The turrets are automated but have slow tracking systems." Jake nodded. The aliens had built their defenses to deal with conventional attacks from other spacefaring species. They expected enemies to announce themselves, demand surrender, and then engage in formal combat. They were not prepared for what Jake had in mind. What about their internal security? Surveillance systems cover all major corridors and work areas. However, the systems appear to be designed to monitor worker productivity rather than detect intruders. Most sensors focus on the central areas while the outer sections have minimal coverage. For the past week, Jake had been modifying his approach based on everything he had learned about the Dominion. These aliens thought like civilized beings, following rules and protocols, even in warfare. They could not understand how a single human could pose any real threat to their operations. They were about to learn. Jake had spent days preparing for this mission. The New Horizon now carried salvaged Cathara equipment, including environmental suits that would allow him to breathe the depot's atmosphere. More importantly, he had studied the alien psychology and behavior patterns from the Scout ship's databases. The Dominion species were all prey animals in their evolutionary history. The Cathara were pack hunters, but they hunted in coordinated groups with clear hierarchies. The Moloch were herd animals that relied on numbers for protection. Even the Zephyrians, for all their technology, were essentially scavengers who avoided direct confrontation. Humans were different. Humans were persistence predators, evolved to track and hunt prey across vast distances. They could adapt to any environment, use any tool, and most importantly, they could think like their prey while remaining utterly alien to it. "Begin the approach," Jake ordered. "Use the captured Cathara identification codes and maintain radio." Silence. The New Horizon drifted toward the depot disguised as a damaged patrol vessel returning for repairs. Jake had carefully arranged debris around his ship's hull and programmed the engines to emit irregular power signatures. To the depot's sensors, he looked like another routine arrival. The deception worked perfectly. The depot's traffic control system guided the New Horizon to a docking bay without any questions or security checks. Jake suited up in the modified Cathara gear and prepared to enter the alien facility. "Arya, monitor all communications and be ready to extract me if necessary. If I don't return within 12 hours, you are to leave the system and continue the mission alone." "Understood, Lieutenant Commander. However, I feel obligated to point out that this plan has significant risks." Jake checked his equipment one final time. Along with the captured alien weapons, he carried several devices of his own design, created from spare parts and salvaged components. "Arya, every plan has risks. The difference is whether you manage them or let them manage you." Jake entered the depot through the docking bay, moving with the confident stride of a Cathara returning from patrol. The environmental suit's helmet display provided translations of the alien text on the walls, while built-in sensors mapped the facility's layout. The depot was a maze of corridors and chambers, filled with the constant noise of industrial machinery. Moloch workers operated heavy equipment, while Cathara supervisors monitored their activities. The aliens paid no attention to Jake as he moved through the facility. In their minds, anyone who had made it past their security systems belonged there. Jake's first target was the depot's computer center. According to the stolen data, all facility operations were controlled from a central hub deep within the structure. He made his way there through maintenance corridors, avoiding the main thoroughfares where surveillance was heaviest. The computer center was protected by a single Cathara guard who was more interested in his entertainment device than watching for intruders. Jake approached from behind and used a nerve pinch technique adapted from the alien's own anatomy. The guard collapsed without making a sound. Jake connected a data probe to the main computer system and began his work. He was not trying to steal information this time. Instead, he was planting something far more dangerous. The program he uploaded was elegant in its simplicity. It would remain dormant for exactly 24 hours, then begin making tiny adjustments to the depot's automated systems. Nothing dramatic or obvious, just small changes that would accumulate over time. The environmental systems would run slightly too warm in some areas and too cold in others. The artificial gravity would fluctuate by fractions of a percent. Food processors would add harmless but foul-tasting compounds to random meals. Lights would flicker at irregular intervals. Door locks would occasionally fail to respond to authorized access codes. None of these problems would be dangerous or immediately detectable, but they would be persistent, annoying, and impossible to fix because the maintenance crews would never be able to find the source of the malfunctions. Jake moved on to his next objective. The depot's communication array was located in the outer ring, away from the main work areas. He planted a second device there, one that would randomly insert false data into routine status reports. Supply requests would be duplicated or canceled. Maintenance schedules would be altered. Personnel assignments would be scrambled. Again, nothing that would cause immediate alarm, but enough to gradually undermine the facility's efficiency and morale. Jake's third stop was the depot's armory. The Cathara took their weapons seriously, but they had not expected anyone to infiltrate their most secure facility. Jake bypassed the security locks using techniques learned from human military training and alien technology. He did not steal the weapons. Instead, he made subtle modifications to their targeting systems and power cells. When fired, the weapons would still function, but their accuracy would degrade over time. Power cells would drain faster than expected. Safety mechanisms would engage at random moments. The modifications would not be discovered until the weapons failed in actual combat situations. Jake spent 6 hours moving through the depot like a ghost, planting his surprises and making his adjustments. The aliens continued their work around him, completely unaware that their facility was being systematically sabotaged by a single human. His final act was the most audacious of all. Jake made his way to the depot commander's office and left a small gift on the alien's desk. It was a simple device, no bigger than a coin, that would project a holographic message when activated. The message was brief and to the point. It showed Jake's face, clearly human, speaking in perfect Dominion standard language. "My name is Jake Morrison, and I am here to collect what you have stolen from my species. This facility is now under human observation. Every mistake you make, every weakness you show, every moment of fear you experience is being recorded and studied. We are learning, we are adapting, and we are coming for you. Sleep well." Jake made his way back to the docking bay, still moving with the casual confidence of someone who belonged there. The New Horizon undocked from the depot without incident. Her departure logged as another routine patrol mission. That it was only after Jake had reached the safety of the outer system that the first problems began to manifest on the depot. Environmental controls started malfunctioning. Communication systems began producing garbled messages. Weapons failed safety inspections for reasons that made no technical sense. The depot commander found Jake's message 3 days later, after dozens of minor System failures had reduced his facility's efficiency by 30%. The hologram played its message while the alien commander stared in growing horror at the face of humanity's representative. Jake watched the depot's communications traffic from his hiding place among the asteroids. The aliens were panicking, sending confused reports to their superiors about mysterious system failures and human infiltrators. They were requesting maintenance teams, security reinforcements, and technical specialists, but they could not fix problems they did not understand, created by an enemy who thought in ways their minds could not grasp. Arya, monitor their communications. For the next week, Jake ordered. I want to know how they respond to this kind of pressure. Their stress levels appear to be increasing significantly, Arya observed. Several crew members have requested transfers, and productivity has decreased by 42%. Jake smiled as he began planning his next move. He was not trying to destroy the depot through direct attack. Instead, he was doing something far more effective. He was teaching the Dominion to fear the dark, to question every shadow. Jake Morrison stood in the deepest section of the New Horizon, staring at something he had never expected to see. Behind reinforced bulkheads, in chambers he had forgotten existed, lay humanity's greatest secret. The manufacturing pods hummed quietly as they worked, creating the future of his species one cell at a time. Arya, how long have these been here? Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The colonial breeding program was installed during the final refit before departure, Arya replied. The project was classified above your security clearance at the time. These systems were designed to establish a human colony, even if the original crew was lost during the journey. Jake examined the status displays. Dozens of artificial wombs lined the walls, each one containing a growing human being. The genetic templates came from Earth's finest soldiers, scientists, and engineers. More importantly, the neural programming. Systems were already downloading everything Jake had learned about the Dominion into the developing minds. How many can we create? Current resources allow for the development of 200 individuals. However, if we acquire additional materials, the system can produce up to 5,000 humans per cycle. Jake felt something that might have been hope stirring in his chest. For weeks, he had been fighting a guerrilla war against impossible odds, striking at the edges of a vast empire with little hope of real victory. Now he saw a different path forward. Begin the acceleration protocols. I want the first generation ready for deployment in 60 days. Lieutenant Commander, accelerated. Growth carries significant risks. The subjects may suffer developmental problems or reduced lifespan. Jake thought about the 40 million humans in Dominion slave camps and the billions more who had died during the conquest. Arya, we're not making people for a peaceful life. We're making warriors for a war that started 3 centuries ago. While the manufacturing pods worked, Jake continued his campaign against Dominion forces in the system. His psychological warfare at the supply depot had been more effective than he had dared hope. The facility was operating at less than half capacity, and 3 more Kavari supervisors had requested transfers to other assignments. Jake's success had also attracted unwanted attention. Arya, show me the sensor readings again, Jake said as he studied the tactical display from the bridge. Long-range sensors detect a Dominion task force approaching our position. 7 ships, including 1 heavy cruiser. Estimated time of arrival is 18 hours, Jake nodded grimly. He had known this moment would come. His attacks had been too successful to ignore, and the Dominion was finally sending a real military force to deal with the mysterious human threat. The task force was commanded by Fleet Commander Thyses, an ethereal who served as one of the Dominion's most experienced strategists. Jake had been studying intercepted communications about Thyses for days, learning everything he could about his new opponent. The ethereals were the most dangerous of the Dominion species. They were psychic, capable of coordinating multiple alien species through mental links. They were also coldly logical, analyzing every situation with mathematical precision. Theises had never lost a military engagement in over 50 years of service, but Theises had never fought a human before. Aria, begin. Preparations for multiple ship operations. I want the manufacturing pods ready for emergency deployment if necessary. The first-generation subjects are not yet ready for independent operation. They require another 30 days of development. Jake studied the approaching Dominion ships and made a decision that would change the course of the war. Override the safety protocols. Begin emergency awakening procedures for all subjects immediately. Lieutenant Commander, this action could result in significant casualties among the new generation. Aria, if we don't wake them up now, there won't be a new generation. The Dominion task force will destroy this ship and everything on it. The artificial wombs began their emergency awakening cycle, rapidly bringing 200 human beings from artificial sleep to full consciousness. Jake watched the biomonitors as his new family came to life, their minds already filled with the knowledge they would need to fight. The first to awaken was a woman with the genetic template of Captain Lisa Shaw, one of Earth's most decorated fighter pilots. Her eyes opened with the calm awareness of someone who had been born for this moment. Commander, she said, sitting up in the pod with fluid grace. Status report. Jake felt something tighten in his throat. The neural programming had worked perfectly. This woman had never lived on Earth, never seen the sun over human cities, never breathed natural air. But she was unmistakably human, carrying in her genes and her programmed memories the essence of everything their species had ever been. We're at war, Captain Shaw. The Dominion conquered humanity 3 centuries ago. We're going to take it back. More pods were opening around the chamber. Men and women emerged with the confidence of experienced soldiers, their minds filled with tactical knowledge and their bodies engineered for space combat. They were not clones but unique individuals, each one carrying different genetic advantages and specialized skills. Aria, begin manufacturing additional ships immediately. Use every available resource. The New Horizons manufacturing systems had been designed to build colony equipment, but under Jake's direction, they began producing something very different. Using salvage Dominion technology and human engineering principles, the systems created small, fast ships designed for hit-and-run tactics. Each ship was barely large enough for a single pilot, but they were incredibly maneuverable and heavily armed for their size. More importantly, they were designed to work together as a coordinated swarm, each pilot linked to the others through advanced communication systems. Commander Morrison, Captain Shaw said as she reviewed the tactical situation, I recommend we avoid direct engagement with the Dominion task force. Our ships are not ready for conventional warfare. Agreed, Jake replied, but we're not going to fight a conventional war. The Dominion task force arrived exactly on schedule, led by Fleet Commander Theises aboard the heavy cruiser Dominance. The ethereal commander had brought overwhelming force to deal with what he expected to be a single human vessel hiding among the asteroids. Instead, he found something unprecedented in Dominion military history. The human ship struck from 12 different directions simultaneously, their attack patterns coordinated with inhuman precision. They moved like a school of fish or a flock of birds, each vessel responding instantly to the movements of the others. The Dominion ships tried to respond with standard tactics, but their commanders were trained to fight other civilized species. That followed predictable military doctrine. The human swarm fought like nothing they had ever encountered. Jake's ship led the attack, his weapons targeting the task force's communication arrays and sensor systems. The moment the Dominion ships were blinded and isolated, the other human vessels struck with surgical precision. Captain Shaw's fighter disabled the heavy cruiser's main engines with a perfectly placed missile strike. Lieutenant Carter, whose Genetic template came from Earth's best engineer. Used an improvised electromagnetic pulse to overload two escort ships' power systems. Commander Blake, bred from a line of tactical geniuses, predicted the enemy's evasion patterns and positioned his ship to intercept their retreat. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, the entire Dominion task force was either destroyed or disabled. Fleet Commander Thizes found himself the prisoner of creatures he had dismissed as primitive bipeds. Jake boarded the Dominance through its ruined docking bay, accompanied by Captain Shaw and a squad of newly awakened human soldiers. The Ethereal Commander waited for them in the ship's command center, his forearms bound with human restraints. "You are the human called Morrison," Thizes said, his mental voice carrying overtones of disbelief and fear. "This should not be possible. My calculations showed that a single human vessel could not threaten a Dominion task force." "Your calculations were based on the assumption that there was only one of me," Jake replied. "You were wrong." Thizes stared at the human soldiers surrounding him, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. These were not refugees or survivors hiding from Dominion justice. These were something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy. "How many of you are there?" The Ethereal asked. Jake smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "Right now, there are 201 free humans in this system. Tomorrow, there will be more. Next week, there will be thousands. We grow, we learn, and we adapt." He turned to Captain Shaw. "Begin salvage operations on all Dominion vessels. I want their technology, their weapons, and their communication systems. And prepare the manufacturing pods for the next generation. We're going to need a lot more ships." Jake looked back at the captured Ethereal Commander. "Fleet Commander Thizes, you're going to help us understand how the Dominion military operates. In return, I'll make sure you live to see what happens when humanity comes home." The New Horizons manufacturing systems worked around the clock, using salvaged Dominion materials to create more ships and more humans. Each new generation was better than the last, their genetic templates refined and their neural programming updated with fresh tactical data. 6 months after Jake Morrison had awakened from cryosleep, the Dominion capital system of Cathara was in a state of complete panic. Reports flooded in from across their empire of human attacks, each one more devastating than the last. The mysterious swarm that had started as a single ship now numbered in the thousands. Spreading through Dominion space like a plague, Jake stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Retribution, watching the massive alien fleet that blocked his path to the Dominion homeworld. Over 10,000 ships filled the space around Cathara Prime, the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen assembled in one place. "Aria, final count on their fleet composition," Jake said, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. 10,347 vessels confirmed. Aria reported from her new housing in the Retribution's advanced computer core, including 12 super dreadnoughts, 160 heavy cruisers, and approximately 8,000 escort vessels. They have concentrated their entire remaining military force here. Captain Shaw approached from the tactical station, her face showing the same grim determination that had become the trademark of the new human generation. "Commander, our scouts report that the Dominion has also positioned defense platforms around the planet. They're using their own civilians as human shields." Jake nodded. Fleet Commander Thizes had warned him that the Dominion leadership would make a final stand at their capital world. The ethereal prisoner had provided invaluable intelligence. Over the past months, his resistance breaking down as he witnessed the unstoppable advance of human forces. "What's the status of our fleet?" Jake asked. 4,700 ships ready for combat," Shaw replied. "The manufacturing pods have produced over 50,000 human crew members. All vessels are fully operational and supplied." The numbers should have been encouraging, But Jake knew that the coming battle would not be won through simple arithmetic. The Dominion fleet was larger, and they were fighting for their survival on their home ground. More importantly, they had finally learned to fear humanity enough to abandon their civilized rules of warfare. Open a channel to all human ships. Jake ordered. The communication system connected him to every human vessel in the fleet. 50,000 voices fell silent as their commander prepared to address them before the final battle. This is Jake Morrison speaking to all human forces. 6 months ago, I was the last free human in known space. Today, we stand at the gates of the enemy capital, 50,000 strong and growing. The aliens thought they had destroyed humanity when they conquered Earth. They were wrong. Jake paused, looking out at the vast enemy fleet that waited for them. Every person listening to this message exists because humanity refused to die. You carry in your genes the dreams of billions of humans who lived and died on Earth. You carry in your minds the knowledge of what we were and what we can become again. Today we remind the galaxy why humanity ruled a world of predators. He took a deep breath before continuing. The Dominion fleet outnumbers us 2-1. They have bigger ships, more powerful weapons, and they're fighting for their home. None of that matters. We are human, and humans don't lose wars, we just take longer to win them. All ships, begin the attack. The human fleet moved forward as one, their formation a perfect example of coordinated chaos that the Dominion tactical computers could not predict or counter. Jake had spent months studying every alien engagement in recorded history, learning their patterns and weaknesses. The Dominion fought like civilized beings, forming orderly battle lines and engaging targets according to priority and threat assessment. They expected their enemies to do the same, following the established rules that had governed galactic warfare for millennia. But humans had learned warfare on a world where the rules were written by evolution itself, where survival meant adapting faster than your enemies could respond. The human ships struck the Dominion formation like a three-dimensional storm, attacking from angles that defied conventional tactical thinking. They used the enemy's own size against them, darting between massive capital ships that could not target them without risking friendly fire. Jake led the assault in the Retribution, his ship diving straight toward the largest Dominion superdreadnought. The alien vessel was the size of a small city, bristling with enough weapons to destroy a planet. It should have been invincible, but Jake was not trying to destroy it through conventional means. "Aria, are the solar calculations ready?" he asked as the Retribution raced toward the enemy flagship. "Calculations complete and verified. However, I must again note that this plan carries extreme risks to all human forces in the system." Jake smiled grimly. "Aria, extreme risks are what?" "Separate humans from everyone else. Execute the plan." For months, Jake's forces had been secretly placing devices throughout the Cathara system. Not weapons or sensors, but something far more dangerous. Using a combination of human engineering and captured Dominion technology, they had built a network of gravitational manipulation devices. The devices activated simultaneously, creating a carefully calculated disruption in the system's gravitational field. The effect was precisely targeted at Cathara's star, triggering a controlled solar flare that would disable every electronic system in the inner system. The Dominion fleet commanders had seconds to realize what was happening before the electromagnetic pulse washed over them like a tide of invisible fire. 10,000 ships suddenly went dark. Their computers crashed and their weapons offline. But the human ships kept fighting. "Secondary systems online," Captain Shaw reported as the Retribution's bridge lights flickered back to life. "All human vessels are responding normally." Jake had learned from his study of Dominion technology that their ships were completely dependent on advanced computer systems for basic operations. Human ships, designed with simpler backup systems and manual controls, could function even after electromagnetic damage. In the chaos that followed, Human boarding parties launched from thousands of ships simultaneously. They moved through the disabled Dominion fleet like wolves through a flock of sheep, capturing vessel after vessel while the alien crews struggled to restore their systems. The battle for the capital system became a rout. Within hours, the mighty Dominion fleet was either destroyed or captured, their crews taken prisoner by an enemy they had underestimated until it was far too late. Jake's forces descended on Cathara Prime like a swarm of avenging angels. The planet's defense systems were offline, its communication networks destroyed. The Dominion government found itself facing an invasion force they could not fight, led by a species they had tried to erase from existence. The final confrontation took place in the Grand Assembly Chamber of the Dominion capital, where the leaders of 4 species had gathered to witness their empire's end. Jake entered the chamber accompanied by Captain Shaw and a squad of human soldiers, their weapons ready but not aimed. The Dominion Council sat in their elevated seats, looking down at the humans who had brought their civilization to its knees. At the center sat High Ethereal Kess, the supreme leader of the Dominion, her mental voice carrying centuries of authority. "So," she said, her thoughts projecting to every mind in the chamber, "the primitive bipeds have returned to claim their revenge. What are your terms, human?" Jake looked up at the assembled alien leaders, these beings who had ordered the conquest of his species and the enslavement of his people. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 40 million enslaved humans and billions more who had died fighting for their freedom. "My terms are simple," he said. "Complete surrender of all Dominion forces, immediate release of all human slaves, full reparations for the damage done to human worlds, and the trial of all Dominion leaders for crimes against sentient species." High Ethereal Kess projected amusement. "And if we refuse?" Jake's expression did not change. "Then you will discover why humans conquered a world full of predators while your species were still hiding from them. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. My people have been patient for 3 centuries, but our patience has limits." The alien leaders looked at each other, their various forms of communication creating a babel of fear and desperation. They had ruled hundreds of worlds and commanded the loyalty of trillions of beings, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity. "We surrender," High Ethereal Kess said finally, her mental voice barely a whisper. "The Dominion yields to human authority." Jake nodded once, accepting the surrender that ended 3 centuries of alien rule. Around him, his officers began the process of establishing human control over the former Dominion capital. Later, standing alone on the observation deck of the Retribution, Jake looked out at the alien world that now flew human flags. In the distance, he could see the first transport ships arriving from the liberated slave worlds, carrying 40 million humans home to freedom. Captain Shaw joined him at the viewport, her expression thoughtful. "Commander, what happens now? We've won the war. But what kind of peace do we build?" Jake was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the journey that had brought him from a lone human in a damaged ship to the leader of a galactic empire. "We do what humans have always done, Captain. We adapt, we grow, and we make sure this never happens again."